Hey folks, Glenn May here with BassResource.com, and today I want to talk to you about fishing the Zara Spook or the Lucky Craft Sammy, any of those type of cigar type baits. Just so you know, what we're talking about here are these baits right here. Okay, we've got a Zara Spook here and a Lucky Craft Sammy over here. All right, these are the type of baits we're talking about today. What we're going to do here, I want to take you through the types of equipment to use for them, times of year, how to rig them, and especially how to walk the dog, how to fish it. So first of all, I want to talk a little bit about when to fish it. Best time to fish this bait is late spring, say just after the spawn, all the way on through the fall, so the warmer times of the year. That's not to say it won't produce in the winter time. It can, but there are other baits that are more productive during that time of the year. It really shines during the warmer months of the year. That's when you want to be throwing this thing. Throw it across points, throw it across shallow humps, throw it across drop-offs, rocky areas, places that have, if there's submerged weeds just under the surface, that's actually the best time or best place to fish. That's what you want. If that hump has some weeds on the top of it, man, that's a prime location, man. Throw it over the top. I'm telling you what, fish are going to clobber it. Now, the different colors that I use, really this floats on the surface. So the fish, all they're seeing, they're looking up, and all I see is just a silhouette, really. So colors don't have as much of an impact. Really what I look at is the color of the belly, because that's, you know, the bottom of the fish. You want to make it look natural. So most fish, bait fish, they're white on the bottom, just like that. They're just white, okay? So, you know, yeah, it's got a neat pattern on the top and everything, but you know, the fish really isn't going to see that. It's the bottom that I care about. So white bottom, that's my go-to bait. In really ultra clear water, where I can see the bottom in say 25 feet of water or more, and I do fish water like that, I go for a little bit more of a translucent color. I don't know if you can see that very well, but you can actually kind of see through it. It's kind of a semi-transparent color. Sometimes I'll go even to a completely clear bait. For those situations. And then in my neck of the woods, the forage base is primarily perch. So for those, you know, I've got this perch pattern. It's got kind of a yellow belly to it. Again, I'm just trying to match the forage of the lake I'm fishing in. And that's about it. Hey, don't go really hog wild with a whole bunch of other colors because you really don't need them all. That's the basics of it. Now, one thing I want to tell you about is the hooks. So you know, on the Sammies, you'll see they're attached by a split ring, whereas on the Zara Spooks, they're kind of hanging. They got a hanger right here that they attach to. So there's a couple schools of thoughts to that. Some people think that by having it by a split ring there, that the fish are less apt to throw the bait. They feel like here it gives them a little bit too much leverage, and the fish can throw the bait. Honestly, I don't think that that's really the cause of why people lose this bait sometimes. Really, it's a topwater bait, so it's a different kind of strike. A lot of times, especially with smallmouth, they just slap it. They come up and smack it on the side of it, and so you don't hook them very well. They just suck it in. You don't get a good hook set. And a lot of it's the blame of the fisherman himself. Sometimes the fisherman, you know, you see that strike, and boom, you know, you just set the hook right away, and that's not, with this bait, you have to wait. You have to refrain from doing that. When you see the fish hit it, wait until he pulls it out of the water and he's got it in his mouth. Wait till you feel the weight of that fish, then set the hook. And I think a lot of times that's why these baits get thrown, is people set the hook too soon. You only got them by the skin of their lip, or you only got one hook in them, you barely got them, and then they just pop off. So I don't think it's so much really whether or not this hook is hanging here or attached this way. It's more so setting the hook and also making sure your hooks are ultra sharp. I sharpen my hooks right out of the package. Most of the time hooks aren't sharp enough for me, so I sharpen them right out of the package, and I can get them sharper than they were when they came right out of the production facility. I've got a video on how I do that and how I sharpen those hooks. I'll link it underneath this video for you so you can check it out later. But I sharpen them ultra sharp, so when those fish come up and just slap at it, I have a much greater chance of hooking those fish and getting it past the barb so I don't lose them when I bring them back in. So sharp hooks, wait till you feel the bite, the weight of the fish before you set the hook. Those two things will save you a lot of heartache. Now, as far as rigging it, here's the thing, I don't see a lot of people talk about this, and I don't feel it's a secret or anything. I don't know why I don't see a lot of people talking about this, but here's the thing. Don't tie directly to the eye of the bait. Okay, a lot of people do that, and you know, you can walk the dog doing it that way, don't get me wrong, but it's a lot easier if you have a little loop knot in the front, or if you've got a split ring or a snap. That allows the bait to swing freely. It's a lot easier to walk the dog that way. So what I do, I use a snap. All right, I'm just using a snap on this bait today. And that's the way I rig it. And I don't use a split ring, because split rings, you know, they've got those wires that come right close together. Eventually your line's going to find that notch and settle right in there. And when you're walking the dog, that line's going back and forth through that little notch, and eventually you're going to get a little nick in there and wear that line down, and you know, the line can break off right at the worst moment. So that's why I don't use a split ring. I don't use a loop knot, primarily because, you know, when you see all these tests about different knot strengths, a Palomar knot or a Uniknot much more stronger than a loop knot. So here I've got a Uniknot tied to my snap, and this is a number 1 snap, or it might be a number 2 snap. I think it's a number 2. And it's tied right to the Zara spook right there. That's my go-to way of rigging it. Works fantastic. All right, so this line here, I want to tell you a little bit about the line that I'm using. This is 15-pound copolymer line. It's not fluorocarbon, nor is it braid, and I'll tell you why. Fluorocarbon absorbs water and it tends to sink. And that goes down underneath the surface, and it's a bit harder to walk the dog when the line is trying to get down underneath the water and pull the bait down underneath the surface. So I don't use fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon is also a little bit wiry. It's got a little bit of spring to it, and it's a little bit more difficult to work the bait that way. Braid, a lot of people love to use braid for topwater just because it's more buoyant and it tends to stay on the surface better. Not a problem. I mean, you want to use it, knock yourself out. I don't use braid because it's not as supple, it's not as flexible as copolymer line, and so I don't get that back and forth. I like to swing it. I like to make big sweeps back and forth, and I don't get that as much with braid. I just don't feel braid's got enough flexibility in it to allow it to do that. It just kind of holds it back a bit. So that's why I use copolymer. And heck, you're going to see the bite. So the whole sensitivity thing is out the window as far as braid is concerned. Doesn't matter. You're going to see the strike. So I use copolymer line. I have that tied onto a medium fast action rod. And that's critical. See that bend in there? Okay, it's got a fast tip to it. Fast action rod, medium fast action rod. Couple things about that. First of all, it allows me to fling this bait way out there. It's a fairly heavy bait, so you can shoot it out a country mile. Plus, with that soft tip, it helps in walking the dog. It has that spring to it and allows you to work it really well. If you have a really stiff rod, it's a lot harder to walk the dog that way. The rod has to have some give in it in order for it to work well. Plus, with these treble hooks, I always like having a rod that's got a lot of give to it, because treble hooks have a tendency to rip out if you're using a real stout rod. So that rod's got that give. As you fight the fish back to the boat, he's not going to tear these hooks out of his mouth. Now, the rod's length is actually less than 7 foot. And this one's actually a 6'10". I think so, yeah. It's a 6'10 rod, 6'8", excuse me. It's a 6'8 rod. And there's a real distinct reason for that, and that's because when you're walking the dog on the boat or even on the shore, but you're pointing the rod tip down to the water and getting it right near the surface. And with a 7-foot rod, it's hard to get it pointing down far enough. You got to stick it out a little bit further, and the rod tip tends to hit the surface. So a 6'8 or 6'10, depending on how tall you are. If you're a real tall guy, like 6 foot or higher, you know, hey, 7-foot rod might be just fine for you. But for me, us short guys, something under 7 foot is an ideal rod for walking the dog. All right, so there's the colors, there's how you rig it, there's the different size baits, the different line. Now let's go fish it. All right, so what I'm fishing here is I've got a point right out, tapers out nice and slow, and there's some weeds right underneath the water. And so the fish are probably right up in there, so let's see if I can't call them out. First thing you want to do when you're casting these things, throw it out there, just engage the spool, and that's it. Just let it sit. Let the rings dissipate. I can't tell you how many times I've caught fish just letting the lure sit like that, and sometimes that's all it takes. You just wait and bam, they'll blast it. So let the rings dissipate. We've done that. Now reel up to the lure, but not till you're moving it with the reel. Just get the slack up, and then all you're gonna do is give it a little pop. That's it, just a twitch. And then let it sit for a second, give it another pop. Start practice doing that. What you're gonna do is you're popping it with your wrist and letting it come back up. You're just putting slack in the line. That's the key to this bait, is slack, letting it go back and forth. So don't think of it in terms of popping it, but instead think of it in terms of putting slack in the line. So you just, you pop it, and then you give it, reel up a little bit of slack, pop it, reel a little slack, pop it, reel a little slack. It's just that simple. And what you gotta do is get a cadence with it. So we're gonna throw it out, let it engage the reel, let it sit, let the rings dissipate. But all you're gonna do is keep the rod tip down, pointed down by the water, let those rings dissipate, reel up that slack, and then just pop, reel, pop, reel, pop, reel. And it's a very simple little cadence, but it'll sashay back and forth. The key to fishing this bait is you don't want to reel the bait or move the bait with your reel. You want to move it with the rod tip. And then a couple other things. When you cast out there, cast past the target that you want to bring it by. Don't cast at it, cast past it. You want it to be sashaying back and forth as it goes past the target you want to fish. So cast beyond it, let the rings dissipate, and then just get the cadence going. You can do it really fast, you can do it really slow. You can even pause it in between, but the key is to experiment with this. One other thing I want to keep in mind here when you're doing the back and forth here. Oh, I just had a fish follow it. You want to do it, it's all with your wrist. Notice I'm not using my forearm, I'm not using my arm, I'm not pulling it to one side. You're popping slack in the line. That's the key thing you got to keep in mind. Slack in the line, reel up the slack between jerks, and then pop slack in the line again. So it's all in the wrist. That's all I'm doing. Notice I'm not moving my forearm, not moving my arm or shoulder, anything. It's just light pops with the wrist. That's all it takes, and it just takes a little cadence. Okay? A little bit of practice, but it's not that hard to do. It really isn't all that hard to do. Keep these things in mind, and you'll have a great time on the water. For more tips and tricks like this, visit bassresource.com.